In 2024, Elon Musk's net worth peaked at around $400 billion. Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, every billionaire you've ever heard of, combined, they don't come close to the wealth of one man who lived 700 years ago. His name was Mansa Musa. And when he walked into a room, he didn't just change the atmosphere, he collapsed the entire economy of a continent. The year is 1324. A procession unlike anything the world had ever seen begins its journey across the Sahara Desert. At its head rides Mansa Musa, emperor of the Mali Empire, ruler of more gold than any human being in history. Most historians overlook this, but when medieval scholars tried to calculate Mansa Musa's wealth, they eventually gave up. His fortune was described as inconceivable and incomprehensible. Modern economists who attempted the calculation put his net worth at approximately $400 billion in today's money. Some estimates go higher. This is the story of the man who was so rich, he accidentally destroyed the economies of 3 countries just by going on a trip, and why almost nobody in the West knows his name. To understand Mansa Musa, you first need to understand the Mali Empire, because what he inherited was already extraordinary. The Mali Empire, at its peak in the 14th century, was the largest empire in West African history. It stretched from the Atlantic coast to the edge of the Sahara, an area roughly the size of Western Europe. It controlled the most important trade routes in the medieval world, connecting sub-Saharan Africa to North Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. What's remarkable here is what those trade routes carried: salt, which was literally worth its weight in gold in medieval Africa, and gold itself. The Mali Empire sat on top of roughly half of the world's known gold supply. Every gold coin that circulated in medieval Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East had likely passed through Mali at some point. Mansa Musa inherited all of this in 1312, and then he made it even bigger. And Mansa Musa didn't just inherit an empire, he transformed it. Within years of taking power, he had expanded Mali's borders, secured its trade routes, and established a reputation that would spread across 3 continents. His court in Niani was described by travelers as one of the most impressive in the world, rivaling anything in Europe or the Middle East. But what truly set Mansa Musa apart wasn't just his military power or his gold. It was his understanding that knowledge and culture were just as valuable as wealth. He sent scholars to study abroad, invited architects and poets to his court, and personally oversaw the education of his children and advisors. Mansa Musa wasn't just rich. He was extraordinary in almost every way. He expanded the Mali Empire to its greatest extent, adding the cities of Timbuktu and Gao, which would become 2 of the most important centers of learning in the medieval world. Under his rule, Timbuktu alone had over 180 Quranic schools and a university that attracted scholars from across Africa and the Middle East. Think about it this way. While Oxford University was just getting started in Europe, Timbuktu's Sankore University had over 25,000 students. It had one of the largest libraries in the medieval world, with an estimated 1 million manuscripts. Mansa Musa personally oversaw the construction of a mosque every Friday in a different location. Architects and builders from across the known world came to Mali. The Great Djinguereber Mosque in Timbuktu, which still stands today, was built by an architect he brought back from his famous pilgrimage. What's remarkable here is his administration. Mansa Musa ran the Mali Empire with a sophisticated bureaucracy, governors, tax collectors, judges, and a professional army. This wasn't a tribal chief. This was a head of state running one of the most complex governments on Earth. And then, in 1324, Mansa Musa decided to make the journey to Mecca. And this is where the story gets almost impossible to believe. He didn't travel quietly. He traveled with an entourage of 60,000 people. His personal retinue included 12,000 servants, each dressed in silk and carrying a golden staff. He brought 80 camels, each carrying between 50 and 300 pounds of gold dust. Some accounts say he brought 100 camels. As the procession passed through cities, Timbuktu, Gao, the Sahara, Cairo, Mansa Musa gave gold away freely to the poor on the streets, to local rulers as gifts, to mosques and scholars. In Cairo alone, he spent and gave away so much gold that he single-handedly crashed the Egyptian economy. Here's the remarkable part. The price of gold in Egypt didn't recover for 12 years. 12 years. The inflation caused by one man's generosity during a single visit lasted over a decade. Modern economists estimate he distributed the equivalent of $1.5 billion worth of gold during his journey. News of Mansa Musa's wealth spread across the Mediterranean world. European cartographers, who had previously left much of West Africa blank on their maps, suddenly started drawing Mali. The 1375 Catalan Atlas, one of the most important medieval maps, shows Mansa Musa sitting on his throne holding a golden orb with the caption, "So abundant is the gold in his country." Mansa Musa died around 1337 after a reign of approximately 25 years, and almost immediately the Mali Empire began to decline. A reminder that sometimes a civilization is built around a single extraordinary individual. But his legacy is staggering. The institutions he built, the universities, the mosques, the trade networks, lasted for centuries. The manuscripts produced in Timbuktu during and after his reign are still being discovered and digitized today. Scholars estimate there are over 700,000 manuscripts scattered across Mali, covering mathematics, astronomy, medicine, law, and philosophy. Most historians overlook the significance of this. When people talk about the preservation of knowledge during the medieval period, they talk about Islamic scholars in Baghdad or monks in European monasteries. Almost nobody mentions Timbuktu, which had one of the largest concentrations of written knowledge anywhere on Earth. Mansa Musa controlled more wealth than any human being in recorded history. He built universities when Europe was still emerging from the Dark Ages. He commanded an empire larger than Western Europe. His single journey reshaped the economies of 3 continents. And yet, ask anyone on the street in London or New York who he was. Most people have never heard his name. That's the story of forgotten empires. The greatest figures in history aren't always the ones we were taught about. Sometimes, the most extraordinary stories are the ones that were never told. Subscribe, because next week, we're going somewhere you've never been before. And before you go, one question. If Mansa Musa were alive today, what do you think he would do with $400 billion? Leave your answer in the comments.